Inside, the lights are low. This isn't your typical lounge. This is where the forgotten tales gather, where the shadows have their say. We'll talk of monsters in the woods, of killers with a motive and lights in the sky, and ghosts in the attic. Come into the waiting room, please.
Tonight we got Rik Offenberger, and he's the editor-in-chief of G-Man Comics. And I want to know a lot of things like I see that Rob Liefeld's on his team. He's like a cover artist. How did Rik get into G-Man Comics? Did he start it or what? Rik, how did you get involved with comic books?
All right, hold on a second. I'm having a little trouble with my volume.
Like,
I have to. Okay, that might have done it. Can you hear me?
yes, absolutely.
You're still kind of quiet here. Hold on. I'm going to switch over from the phone to the PC. Just give me a second.
Hey, Zandy.
And
Can you hear me, Paul? Hey, how are you?
Yep. All right. It's a nice white shirt.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. That's a nice red shirt. I like that. You got the. It's hot. It's hot today, though. It's hot.
It is hot today. Yeah.
Oh my goodness! I know you were out with the dog, right?
Yeah. I mean, we're not like Phil. Phil lives in Florida, and the weather's never hot over there.
Not here.
Yeah. God forbid.
Well, I'm so far south, it smells like sulfur here.
Hey, Phil, have you ever been to Raccoon Island?
No, but I saw that video on it. But this, my street that I'm on, it's if you walk down about a quarter mile, there's the big signpost that lists all the different animals that because we're right next to a wildlife preserve, and I made the mistake of walking down there at night with a little red flashlights so as not to disturb the wildlife. And I'm not joking, about 50 raccoons crossed in like a herd. I've never seen a herd of raccoons cross the street before. And one of them stopped as the herd is crossing and started like walking up to me. and it to be honest with you, it freaked me out a little bit. I love animals, but I just didn't know what its intentions were. But it turns out that the person across the street just dumps full like 50-pound bags of dog food out there for them. And so they're used to being fed by humans, and that's why the thing had no fear of me whatsoever. He'd walk up to me like I had something for him. Wow. So we got our own little raccoon island over here.
Hey, last night I had 4 raccoons eating the cat food that I left out for the opossums.
We got land crab. We've got land crabs here, big blue land crabs that walk around, and tons of turtles. We got 3 or 4 different types of turtles that walk around. I found one the other day that was about the size of my thumb. I'd never seen a box turtle that small before. Real cute.
Wow, that's cool. Rik, you got it together?
Yeah, can you let me in? I'm on the PC too. It says, yeah, there we go.
Okay.
Thank you.
I don't know what happened to the volume, but there you go.
There we go.
Let me turn off the phone.
Okay, Rik, are you ready to start it?
Sorry about that.
Well, no worries.
Okay. All right. Tonight we got Rik Offenberger, and he's the editor-in-chief of G-Man Comics. And there's a whole line of comics there, some beautiful artwork, and I think Rik does some writing for some of those comics. Rik, how did you get involved with comic books?
Well, as a kid, my father read comics when he was a kid. And so before I could read, he was buying comics for me and my brother and reading them to us. I think it got him a chance to read comics himself again. And so it's been a lifelong fascination for me. The summer when I was in junior high, I wrote a script and I sent it off to DC Comics. I got a nice rejection letter. And then it kind of dawned on me, if it took me 3 months to write one script, I'd never be able to write a monthly comic. But I was a retailer at one point, and I was writing a comic, and the art was being done by one of my customers. And each week we were photocopying off a page and putting it in everyone's pull list. So I've been doing this for a while, but it's been about 6 years that we've actually been publishing comics.
So, as a child, were you reading Marvel, DC, both?
Both. Yeah, no, Marvel was a little harder because there were so many cliffhangers and soap opera subplots, and I was getting my comics at like Thrifty Drug and 7-Eleven, and like my father would take me to Sunday school, and then after Sunday school we'd stop and get a Slurpee and a comic. Well, yeah, the comics were coming out bi-monthly in some cases. You never knew when the next one was actually coming in. As a kid, it was hard to track. So if you'd miss an issue at Marvel, it was harder. And then if if you missed an issue at DC, they were all done at once, so you didn't really lose anything. But as soon as I could put together $3, which is how much it cost at the time, I started subscribing to the Marvel comics so I wouldn't miss an issue. Because I'd gotten samples here or there, but you only got like part of the story.
And how many comic books are you writing for at G-Man Comics?
There are 3 ongoing series that I write, and then we do an anthology book. And so I do a variety of stories in the anthology book. And then Eric, who's my partner there, is writing another 2 comics. And Gilbert, who's our art director, is doing 1 or 2. So like with the current Kickstarter, we have 11 comics in there.
Okay. And how
we release them in bulk to try and save people money on shipping because I'm sorry, yes?
Well, I was going to ask you, how did you get Rob Liefeld, that's a pretty big name, on the team?
Well, Rob, I have known him since he was a teenager. We used to shop at the same comic store, and he drew bags for the comic store I shopped in and the comic store across the street. They had pictures of his young blood on the wall of photocopies, and one of them he colored himself back when he was doing the Megaton stuff, before he was ever working for DC and Marvel. And I was there when his art was just showing up in the Who's Who books and the New Talent Showcase, and when Dove launched, Hawk and Dove. And so I've known him for a long time. And I asked him, I said, can you do a cover for me? And he said, when do you need it by? And I told him when I needed it by for the comic we were going to do. And he said, no, I'm booked up for then. And so it took a year before he was free to do a cover for us. And he did the Sergeant Flag #1 cover. And it's appropriate because the main character in the universe is Simon N. Kirby, the agent, and named after Simon and Kirby. And so for Sergeant Flag, the character's name is Rob McFarlane, named after Rob Liefeld and McFarlane, to give you a feel when you pick up the comic of what type of story you're going to get. And he did the first cover for that, so that was rather appropriate.
And Rob Liefeld, Phil in Paranormal Soul Brother, he's the creator of Deadpool.
Yes.
Yes. And I met Rob Liefeld in 1997 at the San Diego Comic.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
he
Rob
oh,
go ahead.
When I was a retailer, he was going to do a store signing for me, but and we couldn't work out a time. And John Beck, who was handling that for him, was trying to work out something, and then New Mutants hit. And when New Mutants hit, and it was that big a hit, they were working out the details, or at least John was. And then he came and talked to me. He says, look, he's doing Golden Apple, and they're having lines down the street for X-Force when X-Force 1 comes out. And he says, we could book you for X-Force 2, but you couldn't handle it. He said, your store isn't big enough to handle the crowd that you're going to get. you don't have the infrastructure or the people to handle the crowds that they get. They had helicopters flying overhead. They had, they had lines down the street. I mean, it was a huge event. And I had a little tiny storefront store in San Bernardino County. You know what I mean? As opposed to the big Hollywood stores. And he was right. I mean, it wasn't really, and they hooked me up with some very limited edition stamped and signed books, and with certificates, and they were good to me. But it was obvious that he had gotten so big and so popular that it was very, very hard to organize and control something like that. And then he came and did a cover for me years later, so that was really nice.
What I remember about Rob Liefeld is when I met him over at the San Diego Comic Con, he had a full line of women who were practically throwing their panties at him because you're a young guy, good looking, very successful in the comic book business. And yeah, he was pretty well loved during that time. Now I hear this sort of, I think it's kind of come down to a level where he doesn't have that fan base like he used to.
I think that he has a strong fan base, and he can move the needle when he comes on a comic. But Youngblood was a million issues, and no one's doing a million issues of anything right now. So it's not just him; it's the whole market. But I think that that was at the epicenter of it. I mean, New Mutants was a loser title. For the X-Men title, it was the least successful title in the run. You know what I mean? If you were buying the comics in, and I was following New Mutants before he was on it, but it wasn't the massive success. And he turned it around in one issue. Yeah, people really resonated with that art and with that style and with the way the stories were told, and it seemed to just build because Deadpool debuts and he's huge, and they launch a new #1 for X-Force, and that's another record.
Is he happy with what they're doing with Deadpool in Hollywood?
I think that he's happy with the way the movie came out, and he's happy with the presentation. Just wasn't really happy with the way he was treated at the premiere. But that's another thing. That Hollywood always has their in-out games, and he's not one of the Hollywood people.
Why did they snub him at the premiere?
I think that had to do. I don't know personally. So I'm just speculating as much as anyone else here. But I think that the problem became that he stood up for Len Wein's widow and Len Wein's contribution to Wolverine, and was one of the people who was a voice that was outraged at the way they were shoehorning Roy Thomas in as the co-creator of Wolverine in the movie, and he got credits for this. Historically, editors are part of the management company and are never the co-creators. You never hear about the editor being a co-creator of any comic character. And so he stood against that, and I think that Marvel, or at least Marvel Studios, wasn't happy to have someone there who was a voice against what they were doing.
Oh,
I mean, it was $1 billion movie, and they didn't want to, and I'm sure that they thought it was no big deal because my understanding, and I could be wrong on this too, is that Roy Thomas wanted credit but didn't ask for money. You assume that down the road he'll ask for money as he's a co-creator, but you don't know that for sure. But I think it was the whole idea that the editors would now be co-creators of every character and every book they edited is the brushback you're getting from the comic creative community. And I don't think that Disney as a corporation wanted to have anything negative going on with the release of their movie that made $1 billion.
Yeah, that's true. Zandine, Phil, before I go on with other questions, you guys want to say anything?
Made a lot more than $1 million, right? I mean,
No, $1 billion.
Billion. Yeah, I was going to say a million is a drop in the bucket these days.
Oh no, that was one of the few $1 billion movies for the year.
Yeah, and, Deadpool is one of the few movies that I kind of like. in the comic book genre these days, because I feel the comic book movies have been so kind of overdone in the past 20 years. We've had so many of them. It seems like every other day there's another comic book movie, and it seems like Deadpool's almost like, well, he's the anti-hero, right? He's not really a hero; he's the anti-hero. So, and the humor is this the big selling point with that. There's no not a lot of drama anyway. There's some drama, obviously, but I think the humor is the big selling point. So I was a big fan of that one.
I think that Hollywood is really, really good at looking at something successful and watering it down until you kill it. I loved Star Wars as a kid. I absolutely
Oh
loved
yeah,
it. And then they come along with Battlestar Galactica. And I love Battlestar Galactica, but it's not on the same level. Do you know what I
no,
mean? The quality is not as good. And if you watch it back now, it's a little more hokey than it was the way I remember it.
yeah.
But then that begot lots of really bad B movie horror, science fiction movies, until they're making movies that aren't really all that good. And they did the same thing with superheroes.
They did. I think
They
I
made
love
some really good movies, and Avengers did really well, and then they made some worse movies.
I love the I really liked when in the late '80s, early '90s. I was really into Wolverine, the Shiva series, and I think like Silver Surfer and then the Ghost Rider were like my three comic books that I was into at that time period heavily. And so when I remember when the X-Men came out and they chose what's his name to be Wolverine, I was really kind of against it.
Jackman.
Yeah, Jackman. But I have to admit, I kind of came around. I think he did end up doing a good job with it. And in a lot of the movies, I thought it was good, especially the one where he died, which turned
Yes.
out to be like a tearjerker, but Logan, but
Yeah.
turned out to be a great film. So yeah, one of those lines I thought turned out great. I'm a big fan that wise. But anyways, I'll look like Zandine was about to say something. I'm sorry I cut you off. Let the Soul Brother ask some questions. He's got some good ones, I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
If he can get himself off mute.
Phil, I was enjoying actually your question. But no, Rick, as I heard you talk, it was three things I was thinking. The first thing I was going to ask you is when you write comics, like when do you get to the point where it's the dialogue is flowing where somebody like myself who has no idea how to do this, but where a person just gets into it, they kind of accept it like the characters, come to life, because I thought that was amazing. I wonder how writers get that groove where it's make believe, but you're getting into the whole, you're going with it, And then I also want to ask you about Daredevil. Do you think Ryan Reynolds represents like his personality? Like he seems like he did a pretty good job to me, but I don't know what the original character was. Although I am a big comic book guy for Marvel. I had DC and Marvel. And then I want to ask you characters like Black Bolt or the Vision, which were interesting, but they never really did too much with the Inhumans. Or I would like to see like Quicksilver, say Race Flash. I like to see more crossovers and more what ifs. But those are things I was thinking about as you were talking about the comics. But you sound like you have some really good pedigree dealing with that guy that drew Deadpool. That's pretty impressive.
I got to tell you, I love the fishbone tie. I love that knot.
Oh,
Uh,
thank you.
looks really cool.
Thank you.
As far as writing comic, usually there's some real big moments in the comic, and so I usually visualize what those moments look like, in my head, and so I'm seeing. In one of the stories, I'm seeing a crossbow where the lead, Agent Kirby, is going to be shot in the head with a crossbow, and I'm thinking this is a good shot. And then there are a few other points in that story where I know the characters are, and I like to work those in first. And so after I get the big visual pictures, the things that I think will really resonate and really be hooks in there, then I go back and I start with the beginning, and I lead up to they get to that action, and then I work on my conclusion. I don't work in specific order, and then of course you fit in all the fight scenes, and you don't want a book full of talking heads because there's no action there, and that just slows down the whole story. But at the same time, you don't want a book where it's just Hulk versus Thing, and they're just pounding on each other for 20 pages.
Okay.
So you have to build it up, and so I like the big moments, and I like a lot of humor in my own life. I like things that flow naturally that are funny, and so I like to bring that into the comic. I'd like to have some humor, but I don't like it to be slapstick. I don't like it to be jokes and one-liners. It's the type of natural humor that you have when you're with your buddies and something happens and you just have a little fun with that. And I like the characters to do that too. And so I like to make sure that there's a little bit of humor, and that just flows naturally as I'm writing the thing. And so as I'm writing, I write full script. So when I'm done, it's a full comic script. And so I'm starting I'm starting with an outline. I'm starting with the big moments that I like, and then I'm starting with the introduction. And so I'll do page breakdowns where I'll decide how many panels and how it's going to fit together, and then I'll move the characters around. And sometimes it flows naturally with the dialogue as I'm writing, and other times I'll leave the dialogue out at that moment, and I'll just be mechanically moving from scene to scene, trying to fit it all together, and then I come back and put in the dialogue because it'll change with the story. But I understand the big picture I want to present in that comic. We did a comic where we had a character called Captain Polska, who was created by a friend of mine, and he's Captain Poland of Canada.
Okay.
And so that's just funny in itself.
Yeah.
And he's Canadian, but of Polish descent. So this made a lot of sense for him as a person. But it was, and so when we do the story, that's a funny moment for the characters that they're going to cross over with the, with the character, and that's who he is. And then we have a lot of fun with the fact that the Canadians are a little more proper, and my character wasn't. We did a story where we did a version of Cops, and that was nominated as a finalist for Story of the Year last year. We only ended up as a finalist, so we were top 10, but we didn't win. But if you've ever watched the TV show Cops, the idea is that a camera crew follows the cops around, and they film interesting things. So Bill Black, who does AC Comics and does FemForce, if you're familiar, makes his own movies about comics. And so I decided he would be the director, and Mark Holmes, who was a writer at AC Comics, is going to be the cameraman. And so I got them to agree to be in the comic. And so that was a little fun for me. And so they're following him around as he's in the middle of his adventure, trying to film it and make, an entertaining show.
Yeah.
And they're in the way. And he's not a PG character, and yet this is going to be on TV. So we've got him swearing, we've got things blowing up, you got a lot of violence. They're not in the right, spot for it. So I thought this was kind of fun, and it worked out nicely with the action. And so it all depends on the story, but there's always some hook that I think that is going to make this fun. And then again, I write around the hooks. We're doing a story coming out next year where the characters go to the San Diego Superhero Convention. Based on the San Diego Comic Convention. But since they're the superheroes, they're like the dentist at the dental convention, or the doctors at the doctor convention.
Hey, Rik.
And so that's the hook.
Cool. It's a good concept.
Hey, Rik.
Yeah, I mean, it's always something that's fun to me.
That's magic, man. I mean, that's magic the way you do it. I could see it. So you've been doing that a long time, so it's not like somebody could just come on that process. But that's very interesting. Thank you for sharing that.
Well, I mean, we have a lot of people who are at a lot of, in different spots because we just brought on a new editor who has been working in the comics, writing some things but hasn't edited before. Before I wrote these comics, I hadn't written comics. I had been in the comic field for most of my adult life. I was a retailer. I worked for Archie for a decade as a public relations coordinator. But, and I'd been a comic journalist, but I had never written a comic before 6 years ago.
Ah,
And I didn't
okay.
think we could do this. And I told
Wow.
Gilbert, who's the artist on the first one, he's our art director. I told him, we can't make a comic together. I worked at Archie. I know what's involved in making a comic. We can't do this on our own. And I was wrong, and he was right.
Hey, Rick,
Yeah.
yeah. Cops, the TV show, I saw them
Yeah.
actually filming over at Stockton, California. So yeah,
Oh,
those,
that's fun.
yeah,
That would be a place to be. Yeah, that would be a place that might be
yeah.
some action.
Now,
You ask. Oh.
oh, the G-Man comics, is it one big universe? Do all the superheroes connect one way or another?
Well, I mean, the idea is that G-Man is a slang term for FBI agent. It comes from all the old gangster movies, if
James
you remember.
Cagney. James Cagney.
Yeah, exactly. And so my characters, the G-Men, they work for the FBI. They had to register with the government to be deputized superheroes. And so we start off the first issue of Is Simon and Kirby with him selecting the team like Phelps used to select the members for Mission Impossible, with different pictures of different characters, and he's going to decide who's going to be on the team. And the idea would be that we'd have a rotating team of characters, and we'd have a shared universe. Now, it was me, it was Jim Burrows, and it was Eric Bennett, and we each had our own characters, and we were all going to play in a shared universe. And so his characters would appear in my books, and my characters would appear in his books. If you are a fan of the early Marvel books, Daredevil would just show up in the middle of Spider-Man for a panel or two and then disappear. Because they all lived in New York City and they'd all bump into each other. And it wasn't this massive crossover where, Flash is racing Superman. It's just, they just bump into each other. And so when Eric's writing his books, if he wants to use my characters, he's free to do it. And if I want to use his characters, I'm free to do it. And we all do it differently. When Gilbert uses our characters, he puts them in his books too. With Eric and I, we do it a little differently because usually I'll ask Eric to dialogue his characters. And Eric will, have me dialogue my characters. I mean, we write the story, but when we come to the actual words that the character's speaking, we'll massage them a little, so they come out the way our characters speak for us. But that's not true with all the crossovers, and certainly we've had characters cross over. Jim said to me one time, one of the villains I had in the book, I have a character called Murder Hornet, and Murder Hornet has it does the whole thing that Iron Man had done, where James Rhodes was Iron Man for a while, and he was pretending Iron Man was a different person. So we have an evil billionaire who's Murder Hornet, and uses the persona to go, do his version of injustice, and then he has someone stand in for him when he's in public, so that people don't know that he's actually Murder Hornet. And Jim says to me, "How attached are you to Murder Hornet?" I said, "Well, he's like the main villain for the many of the books that I'm writing." He said, "Would you mind if I killed him?" So
Oh,
I said, "Well, that does impact." He says, "No, not the actual character, the stand-in guy." And so in one of his books, he killed off one of my characters. And so then I wrote a whole story about the replacement character. And so, we all have fun with it. We all enjoy the shared universe. And we enjoy having the characters interact. I think that makes it more fun for the reader, as the characters it isn't, it's such a big deal they cross over. But we cross over with other companies, and that becomes the
that's
bigger.
what I was going to ask you. Yes. So you do cross. What companies do you cross over with?
Well, we did a crossover with Tomorrow Girl and Anarchic Press, and so it was our version when we published it was Sergeant Flag meets Tomorrow Girl, And then we had as the characters were traveling between dimensions to get there, we had other independent characters, universes appear in splash pages. But when they got to Tomorrow Girl's universe, it was all manga. And then our characters stood out that they weren't. And then when she came back to our universe, she was still manga, and our characters weren't. So I thought that was a little bit of fun too. We're planning for next year a crossover with Heroic Publishing but we're going to announce that later.
Do you have you crossed over with Lloyd Smith's Blue Moon Comics?
We have not done that yet. We do a thing where backers can join our universe and be in the Agent Kirby book. And so we had Spider Squirrel in there, and he's doing, his own book. And we've had a few other characters that branch out into their own book. But we've got a variety of different crossovers. We're crossing over with Windmill Comics in the current Kickstarter in the Tyrannus book, and we're hoping at some point. It's a Dutch company, so we're hoping at some point to have a foreign language version available when we translate this, because it'll be sold over there as well as sold here.
Rik, I got to tell you something. Okay, we
Sure.
got 5 minutes to this interview, and then we're going to cut off. We're going to take a 10-minute break, and you'll receive another link so we can finish up this interview. And because
Right.
I still have a lot of questions for you. Phil's probably got a lot, and the Paranormal Soul Brothers got a lot. So,
Absolutely. And I didn't answer all of his questions before. He had put them together, and I kind of lost. I think I answered one and then lost track. So
Such great information. You gave me everything, one-stop shop.
okay. Well, thank you.
But yeah, I mean, the last thing was about the characters just showing up. You don't need like you said, a Flash versus Superman, or, I mean, they could just, you could have them just interact, briefly. But I like your usage of his character or yours. Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah.
and all these comics, are they digital?
We do both. I like print, but that's based on my age, I assume. And I think that, but some people have a storage issue, where you put all your comics.
Yeah.
And so some people like digital because they're more convenient. Some people like digital because you can read them on your phone, or on your tablet. It's real hard to read them on your phone. I got to tell you, I get all the art as we're in production, and it comes on the phone, and I'm sitting there with my thumbs pulling it apart to try and see the panels and to read it. And as we're putting because the wheels never stop turning. We've got a Kickstarter going on right now this month. It'll end at the end of the month, and then the next Kickstarter starts in February, and we intend to launch every February 1st and every August 1st. But 3 of the books for February are already in production. And, we got to get them all going all the time. It can never stop because otherwise we won't be ready for February.
And Rik, when you come back on the second link, can you show us some of these comic books? I want Phil and the Paranormal Soul Brothers see some of the artwork.
Yeah, and Paul, I wanted
since we got a 10-minute break, I can run and grab a few.
Okay.
Yeah. I want to know if you guys get the Mandela effect with your comic books at all. That's the thing when we come back too.
Okay. Sounds good.
And we got about 2 minutes. Are these comic books archived?
Well, I mean, you can get them at every one of our Kickstarters. You can get all the back issues. We've produced 81 comics so far, and we've arranged so that you can still buy the back issues, and they'll ship with the current comics. And we only sell the comics on Kickstarter. So if you miss out now, you're going to wait 6 months before they're available again.
And would I be able to find any on Google Books?
No, they're not on Google Books. We have a variety of different platforms, but we may run out of time for this one because we're on 3 different platforms that as soon as we pick back up, I'll go over how we're distributing.
Okay. Yeah, because like my books and everything, I make sure that they go on Google Books, but I don't make any money from that. But I get a lot of readers though, which is good.
Yeah. I don't know how you make any money in comics anyway. I mean, it's a game of pennies. It's not a game. It's not, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um,
I
the
used to,
whole,
when I was a kid, I used to buy tons of comic books. I mean, oh my God. My first letter published was in Mr. Miracle #4.
right, but Mr. Miracle was 20 cents, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right, exactly.
And they gave
Exactly,
up
Rick.
half of that, so they got a dime. And out of that dime, they had to pay for printing, shipping, and pay the creators and turn a profit.
Yep, yep, yep. We got 45 seconds.
Okay, so I'm gonna go grab a few books, and I'll see the link when I come back.
Okay, so Rick, we were kind of talking backstage. You know, Daryl Goza, he's a very good artist.
Yes,
Lloyd
yes,
Smith,
yes,
Blue Comics, and Richard was
absolutely.
supposed to be here, but Richard kind of goofed up on the time zone. So anyway, I know that Phil and I know the Paranormal Soul Brother have some questions for you. So let's
Absolutely.
go ahead first, and then I'll take over.
Sure.
Brother Phil, please, would you do me the honors, please?
You assist. The Hey Rick, the
Hey,
I was just wondering about the art. Do you do any of the illustrations yourself, or do you write the stories, or both?
I, I write the stories. There's a big difference in art in general. A lot of people can draw a static character. And like the original designs for Lynx, the original designs I did for Sergeant Flag, I drew those as a static piece, the character standing like in a Superman pose, things like that. It's very, very hard to move them across the page and keep them in proportion and move them around and see them in 3D. It's flat, but you know what I mean, to get that perspective. And I do not have those skills.
When
My
you're
skills are very rudimentary. And so I write and I publish, but I don't actually draw any of the books aside from the two initial designs.
Rick, can we see some of those comic books?
Well, it all started with this comic right here. This was the one I had in my comic shop. My comic shop was Paper Hero Comics, and this was drawn by one of the customers in the comic store. And I told you we had given out photocopy pages, and they were all in black and white. I don't know how well you can see this with the at the time. And I was lettering it with my Macintosh, literally pasting it to the board and making photocopies. Um, I had thought that I would sell them at the store and I'd sell them at comic conventions, and we didn't have to sell out. I think the print run at the time was either 500 or 1,000. We had to buy a case, whatever that was. And so I had to move a certain number of units to break even. And so I thought we could do this, but I ended up getting divorced and losing the shop and, all of those things. And so it took me 30 years to print the comic. And when we finally printed the comic, it turned out I was still in touch with the artist. I had run into his younger brother at a comic convention, and his younger brother is a Hollywood producer. And he came up to me and talked to me at the convention and got me in touch with Justin. And I took the original comic, I had it professionally colored, and I had it relettered, and I actually had someone proofread the whole thing. And so I published it, and we finally had copies of the comic 30 years later. So that was a lot of fun. Probably not the highest quality work we've ever done. It was the first thing I ever wrote. It was the first thing he'd ever drawn as a comic. It was very, 90s style, indie. But this is the Rob Liefeld cover you were talking about. And this is the first issue of Sergeant Flag. And in the back here, this is the original drawing that I had done, professionally inked and colored. But that was the original drawing I had done.
You're
And
a artist.
it takes a long time for me to do one static picture. So we start off with the character in that costume. And then as he joins the FBI, we transition him into the comic, the costume we use here in the comic.
Do you work in pen and ink, or do you draw on a computer?
I don't do any of it on the computer. I drew in pencil and then I inked it. But mine, my inks are not good enough, so we had one of the inkers who actually inks our comics ink the stuff that I had penciled, and then we had the colorist from the comics color the piece. This is another Sergeant Flag piece. This is by Murat Michaels, just to complete the image once. And this is the story, the cop story that we were talking about earlier. And so then these are the, I don't know if you can see this well, these are the Hollywood producers coming to film it. And this is him telling them off. And then we did another version with the way he sees it, with everyone yelling and cheering as he tells them off, that we just ran on the back cover. But we had a lot of fun with that. Same issue, but here Mark and Bill on the cover. This comic was from the prior year, and we were nominated and again didn't win, but we were top 10 for cover of the year. And Stephanie Renee does a lot of our covers. Some very pretty work. And all this stuff you can see on our website, g-man-comics.com. And that also has a link to the Kickstarters as they launch. This is something I want to show you that's a little different. We were contacted by a movie company, and they are doing a movie. And so they had us make a comic for their movie. And so this is an adaptation of their movie. Their movie has not come out yet. And it includes word searches. And they produced it into, hold on a second, a comic book with a coloring book. And these are available at Walmart right now. You can get them at walmart.com. You can get them on Amazon. You can get them from their website. They have them in a variety of places. And so that's kind of cool to do something for someone else. They had seen what we had done, and they had hired us to make the comic for them.
What do they sell for? What do they sell for at Walmart?
I think they're $20 at Walmart. And then this is the Tomorrow Girl crossover.
Wow.
And
Rik,
as you can see from the cover, she is in manga style while he is not.
Rik, am I able to go into a comic book store and find a G-Man comic book?
All right. So here is the deal with distribution. The comics we produce are available exclusively on Kickstarter. All the ones that are G-Man branded are on Kickstarter. And we have a variety of back issues because now we have 81 comics out. We signed a deal with Advent Comics a few years ago, and they were going to distribute our comics into comic shops. So right now in the current Kickstarter, we have Agent Kirby number 11, and they're going to start with issue number 1, and they're going to do 4 issues as a miniseries, and they're going to release them into comic stores. Now, as this was going along, Diamond imploded. You may or may not have heard the news, but Diamond had a lot of trouble. They went into bankruptcy.
Yep.
And so Advent did not distribute our book into Diamond, and we did not get caught in that horrible maelstrom of all that. But we signed, Advent signed with Filbo Distribution, And our comics are available. The first issue is branded with the Advent logo instead of the G-Man Comics logo. And it's available right now on mycomicshop.com, as well as anyone else who carries the Filbo Comics. And you can get the first issue, and the first four will go there. And then as that does well, we hope to then branch out into some of the other titles and do it as a series of miniseries. When we publish, we're publishing 10 comics this round. We published as little as 6. We've gone up to 11. And we're publishing biannually, or semi-annually, I'm sorry. We're publishing twice a year. So the comics that are going to be released into the stores are going to be released monthly. So we're never going to release all of our titles at once. We need to do it in clumps so that, the back catalog, feeds into what we're doing there. But if you, any store that is using Filbo to get their comics, and that includes a variety of independent comics, a huge quantity of them, they will carry our comics if they order them, and so they will be in stores. And we ship in November for the first ones into the retail stores. So we have not made it into the retail store yet, aside for the crossover that we did with Antarctic, because our Tomorrow Girl Sergeant Flag crossover for us was a special. For them, it was Tomorrow Girl number 10, and so that was in comic stores. We are also, so we will be in comic stores. We are on Kickstarter. We also are doing some trade paperbacks. So these are on Indie Planet, and these are available all the time. Whereas the comics are limited, trade paperbacks are different. And so it is a collection of the stories. And on the inside, you get my original drawing. You also get Rob Liefeld's version for the cover, and this is virgin copy so that you don't get the logos in the way of anything. I can see the full art.
Those look like they're pretty expensive to print with all the color you've got in that.
Well, I mean, there isn't in everything. It's a game of pennies. Yeah. You know what I mean? It is. We wanted to price these at $19.99. And to price them at $19.99, we're still looking at like $12 to print these. Wow. Yeah, or 12 and change. And so there isn't a huge profit margin in there. And then there's shipping, and there's and we'd like to pay the artists. And, well, we paid them with the comics, but you know what I mean. This money rolls into the next round.
Yeah, this seems to be at this point a passion project for you. I noted just before the break, you said, I don't know how you make any money in comics. And I don't think I've heard anything more true ever said by anybody, because in my head, I was, just speculating because of the beautiful color work, especially. I think it just showed us and add shipping to that, and then actually trying to pay the artists for their beautiful work. Especially creating the stories, you're probably working for nothing.
Well, I mean, that is the business model at the moment, is that you run the Kickstarter and you get X number of dollars, and then you split that up, and there are a lot of small publishers that work the same model. The artists get paid first, and so the artists get paid, and if you make enough money, then money trickles down. But you kind of have to pay the artists, because it takes me a few weeks to write the story. We go through a variety of iterations. I write a first draft, and then I turn it into the editor, and the editor will read it and send back notes and suggestions and all sorts of things. And then I do what I call the third draft, because all the notes and suggestions are actually a second draft, and we usually end up with 4 or 5 drafts. If I'm working with another writer, if I'm got Eric's characters in my book and I want him to dialogue his characters, we're going to go back and forth with different drafts too, till we get it where his characters sound the way he wants them to sound, mine sound the way I want them to sound, and then we have the interaction that we need for the story. So there's a variety of give and take, but it's a process, and so you hope to generate enough income from this, from the trade paperbacks, from the stuff, because the trade paperbacks generate income into this as well that doesn't go directly to the artist, from the book that's already published, because it's not like it's a royalty system, but it goes into the art for the other books as we keep producing books. So
That's what I
in
was going to ask
general,
you. Is that did the artist get a royalty, or they just get a flat fee for their artwork?
they get a flat they get a flat fee for their artwork, and you kind of you have to develop a variety of different revenue sources on this, and different ways to pay for this, so that some of the backers will pledge to join the book, and that helps. The backers themselves support this. We'll get some money from the retail versions. We'll get some money from the trade paperbacks. And so when you only have so much money to spend on this project. And so what you get from the Kickstarter has to fund the next round. So you know what you can and can't do based on how well you did on the Kickstarter. I refer to each Kickstarter as an opportunity to go out of business. If you don't make enough money on the Kickstarter to pay for the next round of books, you go out of business. You want to make enough money so that you can pay for the next round, and someday we will stop publishing, and then all the money from the Kickstarter is profit. You know what I mean? But
yeah, when you're doing a new Kickstarter for a new episode, a new comic, do you? I know as far as layout goes, when you're about to write the story, do you do a set? All right, this is gonna be 12 pages. This is gonna be 20 pages, and that has to affect the story in some ways. I mean, like when you're writing a script, I know for just for movies, for example, 60 pages is 60 minutes. As far as like the layout for, text and everything else, how do you work that out with a comic?
well, with the comic, we're doing 20 pages typically for a standard comic, and 20 pages is what Marvel does. So we're right in line, which is how we did that. And it has to be divisible by 4, because I don't know if everyone understands how printing works. But if you take a piece of paper and you fold it in half, in the middle where you fold it in half is where the staple goes. And when once you fold it in half, you have 4 sides. And those 4 sides are the comic. And so all comics have to be printed in increments of 4 pages. So you can't do 22 pages. You can do 20 pages, you can do 24, you can do 28. But we typically do 20 pages. And if we're doing the anthology, it'll work out a little different. We've gone different ways with it. With the first issue of Sergeant Flag, I wanted a backup story, so we went 28 pages, where we did a 8-page backup story. But in general, the anthology is going to be 20 pages. We did 8-page stories in the anthology one time, and so that's 24 pages. We did 3 stories. I'm doing another anthology book coming up where we're going to do 8 pages, 8 pages, and 4 pages. We've done as little as 1 page, where it's just a cute little story. But it all depends, but it's got to fit. As a business model, you got to fit the product that you're putting out. Same thing with your movie. You got to, you can only run for so many minutes. You can't write forever, and so that's where the art of the page comes in. You have to think of the page turns and how it, because the page itself is a piece of art, and each page is an individual piece of art. And so if you're going to do a splash page, it has to fit in the right spot. And if you want to do a double page splash, it can't be on the back side of the page where one page faces the reader and the other doesn't. And so your story has to be formatted if you wanted to do a big double page splash, so that fits in the right spot of the story. And so if you're telling the story and you want something to happen on the page has got to be part of a complete story on its own, just 1 page. You can drag it over.
There are a lot of back and forth between you and the artist as far as where the actual text of the story goes in relation to where the artwork fits around the story. I've always wondered how that's a lot of creativity as far as making it readable and making the artwork pop at the same time, and not interfering with each other.
Well, I'll write full script. So when I'm done, the story is complete. And they know where the words are and how many words there are. So they'll make the space for that when they're doing it. And some other artists will draw little balloons by hand in there and make sure the space, the lettering fits, and others don't. And in some cases, it's a little hard. And in some cases, you have to adjust the text after you see it. In almost all cases, you have to do a certain amount of rewrite when you've got the art just to make sure they sync. You know what I mean? Because what's going on in my head is not necessarily what's going on in the artist's head. And but there, I mean, the first step is that the editor has to read it, because sometimes you know what you're thinking, but when you write it out, you may have skipped a step that made sense to you because you knew the story and doesn't make sense to the reader. And so that's the first step, is having someone read it who isn't a friend. I mean, Chris and I are friends, but you know what I mean? Who isn't someone who's just going to blow smoke. You
Rick,
know what I mean?
Rick,
Yeah.
do you still need letters? I mean,
Yes,
you can't just do it on the computer?
he does do it on a computer, but you
Oh,
need someone who can do it properly. Okay, so yeah, no, the lettering is part of the art. It absolutely is. Let me pull out something here for you and just show you some. Um,
Do you choose the font, or does the artist
I
choose
do
the
not.
font?
That's the letterer who does that.
Letter does that.
Um, I mean, from our balloons, from the captions to the fonts to the balloons. Let me see if I've got some, when you make the words bold and in color, that's part of the art. I mean, literally, how you fit the words in, uh, the sound effects. I don't know if you can see these things well, but the sound effects that you do with the crash and the boom and all that stuff, that wraps around the characters. That's part of the art and part of the presentation. So you have to have someone who's skilled at that. It's not just you type the words on your computer and then justify it and stick it in a little balloon. It has to be out of the way so it doesn't just damage the
Well,
artwork, and so it doesn't damage the story. There's a
how
there's a
does
skill
that
to that.
work where people aren't butting heads, where the artist doesn't say, "You ruined my artwork," and the letterer, are these different people? The letterer, the artist, the
Yes,
editor? Sounds like
yes,
you got
yes,
like
yes.
a whole team.
Yeah, no. Every book has a team. So I will write full script. I will then pass that off to the editor, who will do it. We hand the script to the artist. Our artist does not live in reasonable vicinity of us. Well, none of the team is. I mean, it lives within any distance. We can see each other on a regular basis. Our art director Gilbert, who did my first comic, lives in the Philippines. He doesn't even live remotely in the same time zone as me. So I will write the script. I will send it off to Gilbert. Gilbert will read the script. He will draw it, and he'll put it together. And the artist does the page layout. I've decided how much of a story I need in each page, and I tell him what happens in each panel. But he gets to place the camera angle. He gets to decide how big or how small they are, how the page fits together. And each page becomes its own little piece of art, not just the whole comic. And so when you look at a single page, it's got to be pretty, And so, and then they have to make the story flow, because it flows from panel to panel in story form, but it has to flow in art form. And if you've ever bought one of the old 70s comics, the old Bronze Age comics, you'd see little red arrows in different places. Those were places where the editor did not feel the artist was able to make the story flow. And so they drew this red arrow to make the reader know that it goes to this panel next, because it wasn't clear in the layout. We haven't had to do that. But so far, the artists I've worked with, and we work with well, we do bring in new artists. We work with a lot of the same people over and over and over again. Gilbert's been with us since issue 1. And so Gilbert will draw what he draws, and then but they all start out with a sketch. They do thumbnails and layouts and things like that. And so we can look at the layout, and we can look at the script, and we can ask for corrections, or we can change the script based on what we see before we've committed.
Before it goes to print, Are you the last
before
person
we
that
before
signs
he's
off
taking
on it?
ink to the page. When it doesn't, when it's not even fully penciled, when it's just a rough layout.
But
Um,
you're the
so
person that finally says, "All right, this is the way it's going to be. I like this.
yeah,
This page looks good. Let's move to the next one."
right. And so then he'll draw that page. And some artists I work with are very methodical, page 1 to page 20 in order. Gilbert likes to do the pages he likes to do, so we're going out of order. Whatever looks most appealing to him is what he does. And everyone has their own system. You know what I mean? Because this has got to be fun for him too. And so as I don't write in order, but by the time I'm done, it's in order. He doesn't draw it in order. He likes the action scene too and wants to draw that first. And so
Do you find it
they,
helpful
it,
to read something, read the finished product, and then let it sit for a week and then come back to it? Or
oh, it sits forever. You know the I have written everything for the February Kickstarter already, and
wow.
we've only and I am right now starting the first book for the August of next year's Kickstarter. So it sits for a while. Um, the wheels never stop turning. We've got 3 books in production for February 2026 right now, and they were all supposed to start on September 15th, which is when the funds come in from the Kickstarter. And then we divvy up the money among the artists and they'd start, but some of them started early.
So the
Yeah,
stuff that's out the stuff that's out right now, that you were working on last year.
yes.
That's awesome.
Well, I mean, the thing is that 6 months seems like a long time between each comic. But the problem becomes that we're all doing this part time. I'm working a full time job, and I'm doing this on the part, as just for fun, to have a good time, to make the comics I always wanted to make the comics I wanted to read. They're also not able to quit their day job to do comics. So if you can do a page a day, you can work for Marvel if they like your art. But if you work with me, you do a page a week. Because you got to fit it in between your life, between your job, between your family, between everything else you do. And so at a page a week, it's 20 weeks before you finished a 20-page comic. And
Passion
we got a
project.
Kickstarter going every 26 weeks. And 4 weeks of those 20, after those 20 weeks of doing a page a week, is the Kickstarter itself. And 2 weeks is we're waiting to get the funds from Kickstarter. And so after those 6 weeks, we're on to the 20-week cycle of making the next comics. So as the artist, and they're all a variety of combinations. We have some artists who color their own work. We have some artists that only pencil and we have someone else ink. We have some artists that pencil and ink and someone else colors. It all breaks down, but the people who are, each person is doing their own piece at their own time. When we launch the Kickstarter, ideally everything would be done, because that would be ideal for us. And then everything is easy, and then all we'd have to draw any of the back characters into one book. But this time we were behind a little on the coloring. It happens, and a little bit on the inking. But we've got them all. We got 1 more week to go on this Kickstarter, and we've got 8 pages left to color. And usually we get in, a few pages each day colored, so it's not going to be an issue. And then we've got 2 weeks left before it funds. And then then we have to have the backers answer the backer survey. So while we get the money, we're still waiting for the backers to tell us which covers they want, because we offer, 2 or 3 covers for each of the comics, and they get to select what they want. And then once we get those surveys back, we turn them into the printer, and the printer gets the list of all the people who are backing and where they live and what the shipping is going to look like. And so then they give us a price that includes printing and shipping. And so then and so as soon as we get the backer surveys back, as soon as we get the last survey back, that's to the printer. And then the printer's trying to calculate out what they need to pay, to print this. And so we pay that out of the Kickstarter, and then we pay the artists, and then we roll forward into the next line. And so it's always going. You know? The wheels never stop. There's never a day where we're saying, "Oh well, we're done now. Let's sit back on our laurels and wait." You know, and we got a little bit of breathing room. It never stops.
Rik, are more people buying comic books that are digital or the hard copy?
We sell more hard copies than we sell digital, but on Kickstarter, our price point is $10 a comic. And the problem with Kickstarter, at least in my view as the purchaser for all these years, is you pay $10 for the comic and then you turn around and pay $6 for shipping.
Yeah.
And so that's why we do what we do. Instead of doing 12 Kickstarters in the year, you know, one every month, and some people do, they just open up multiple accounts and then they, you know, and they just keep releasing the stuff. We release them in bulk, and it cuts down on your shipping. And your shipping drops from $6 for one comic. We can ship 6 comics for the same $6 in the same Gemini mailer, because the mailer has a certain bulk to it too. And then when you put the comics in, you have to get over 6 to bring up the price on the shipping. So it saves us money on shipping. It saves the customer money on their shipping. And if you really wish they were coming out monthly, just read one each month.
You know, I published one comic book, The Legendary Dark Silhouette, and it took me a whole year to get this thing published. I had like 3 different artists. I had Brandon McKinney, who used to do the Star Wars comics. He did the inking. Um, it was a pain in the ass. It took me a whole year just to publish that one comic book. And I know Phil also too had something like a comic book about his dog. And I don't know if
That
he
that's the Sacramento one, that the Sacramento City of Blood book.
Oh yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's right.
You know,
Well, I got to tell you, the first issue of Simon and Kirby we're doing with Gilbert, he's doing all the other work on his side because he said, well, we can do a comic, but you know, he had to do his real jobs. We did our first comic together. And then Alan came in, and it took Alan 6 months to do issue 2. But since it took Gilbert a year to work our comic around his other work, his other bang work, he, you know, they were both ready at the same time. So our first Kickstarter was issue 1 and issue 2. And so now we're rolling that forward. And so we release whatever we have done in 6 months. And I thought that we could speed up the process by maybe bringing in more artists or something, but all we've ended up doing is making more comics.
do you see AI? Do you see AI as a new future for comics, or the end of human creativity?
The AI is, to a certain degree, is theft. I mean, that's all it really is. AI in general is, I mean, the way it works is by sampling. AI does not, you say the I in AI is intelligence, and it doesn't really, you know, if you look at the process, it doesn't really have any independent thought. What it does, you know, it can be amazing that you say, oh, I can't believe we could do that. But the joy of AI for people in business is that it can do comparisons really, really well and really, really fast. So it can compare 2 things. It can bring together things, and it can, you know, you give it your kernel of an idea, and it can compare that to other fully conceived ideas, and so it can make it look like it's written something for you based on what you fed into it. But in reality, it's just looking at samples of what other people have done, and then just taking your small facts and overlaying them on yours. So if you're using it as a writing tool, everyone's writing's going to look exactly the same.
It looks to me like it's
really overlaying the same framework with just your minor variations and facts. Same thing happens with the art. It's sampling other art, and it has a variety of different static styles. But and I'm sure that there's some people who know how to manipulate it well. I am not one of those people, and I'm not going to ever be one of those people. But when I'm working with an artist, they can draw anything. When you're
True.
working with AI, it's going to be really hard to prompt it to make your character. I mean, if you look at it, I mean, we're getting just past the point where it wants to give people multiple extra fingers. You know what I mean? But it's still not creating a standard character that can move across a page.
Yeah.
I think that what happens is at some point in the future, maybe Marvel or DC will start publishing AI comics, and that'll be the end of the whole industry.
That's what I'm afraid of. 'Cause I
Yeah.
see it. I see it affecting the music industry already, and in small term, I'm seeing it cutting into artists' work already. You know, like logos and things like that, where it used to be, artists were getting paid for this work. Now they're not, and I'm wondering it's only a matter of time before it affects, the comic industry.
But you see, the thing is that comics have always had these superstars who have different styles and different presentations. And so the joy of Jack Kirby was these tremendous layouts, this tremendous intricate detail, the tremendous ideas that he had that were new and original. And I mean, everyone has a mother box now, but in 72, no one had a mother box. You know what I mean? The idea that you even had that, the concepts and the things that they were able to create really resonated with people. You look at the big boom in the 90s with comics, and you look at an art style like Rob Liefeld's, because we were talking about him earlier, which is very stylized, or Eric Larson's, that's very stylized. Even Todd McFarlane's, even if you go back to John Byrne had more of the manga eyes, which were a little bigger, and the head was a little bigger. And, he synthesized that into a Neil Adams look that was more of a slick, advertising style. And you lose all that with AI because it homogenizes everything to the point where it's not fun and it's not exciting. And I think that's your problem with the problem you're having with superhero movies is that Deadpool was new, it was original, it was different, and that resonates with someone. It's exciting. There's some art here. It's not just, it's not just wallpaper. And you need that in your comic. You need that energy. You need that excitement. You need different styles. We publish a lot of comics, and none of the artists look exactly like one another. It's you want that style. You want that variation. You want that energy, and you lose all that with the computer. You really do. And you're going to lose that with logos too, because you're going to end up with 12 different styles of logos. People will just variate on that. Maybe it's not 12, but you know what I mean? You lose all the originality and creativity.
I think so.
People are
I
doing that because
100%
it's
agree.
easier.
I
And I
agree.
mean, and you hope it doesn't become like film, because beautiful, beautiful photos used to exist before with artists who were photographers who knew how to light and knew how to cast and knew how to set everything up and make everything beautiful. And now everyone just takes the picture with their phone, which is a lower quality picture but higher quantity. It's dirt cheap and it's high quantity. And I think that's good for capturing moments and for sharing them on social media and all of that. But if you've got someone investing in your comic and spending money on your comic, you've got to give them a piece of art, and you can't give them something that's a paper cutout.
Awesome. Thank you. We're down to about a minute and a half. I would just want to thank you, Rik, for your time tonight. It's been awesome. I especially like the your insight into all the hard work it takes to create this, because everybody wants to do these things, and a lot of people have the want to do, to be creative and create these things, but they don't realize just how much hard work, how much time it takes, and all the back and forth just to put out that product. And I really appreciate your insight into that. Thank you.
I got to tell you, everyone can do it now. We're in an age where everyone can do it. You write your story, you spend your time putting the story together, you get people to actually read it and make sure that it makes sense to them and it flows nicely and it tells the story you want to tell. And then you work with an artist. I mean, and there are places where you can work with artists who just, and you do a splitting of the fee. Yeah, you can split profits, and you can do a Kickstarter and you can make your own comic, and you can print on, you can print on demand, and this isn't out of the range for anyone to do. And if you're willing to just put in all that sweat equity in that first issue and not stop, you just roll the profits into, to an actual, machine, into actually doing the next issue. And so as long as we don't take a break and say, okay, well, now we're going to, take 6 months off and then we'll reconvene, we just keep it rolling.